A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors, begins with a very familiar kind of scene. A girl in her room at night trying to stay awake. This girl is Kristen, played by Patricia Arquette, in her debut film role, actually. She's keeping herself busy building a model house, Freddy's house, in fact, which, since the last time we saw it, looks to be in need of some renovations. She's keeping herself caffeinated with a spoonful of instant coffee and washing it down with some Diet Coke, which is always my favorite late night snack of choice. Highly recommended. And she's blasting some rock and roll. Anything to keep herself from sleeping. Because she's been having these bad dreams, dreams of Freddy. And as per usual, she's told by her mother to stop worrying and to just get some sleep. So this is very much charted waters, but right away, the movie lets us know that it's back on track with the concept of Freddy Krueger as the Dream Stalker, but also right away, it sets itself up with this frame of mind for the audience and totally plays against certain expectations that we may have. So there's that great dream sequence where Kristen does fall asleep. She goes into the house, there's the creepy little kids there. She finds all the horrifying dead bodies. She's chased by Freddy. She wakes up, only to find she's still dreaming. Freddy's in her mirror. The faucet transforms into his claw. He slices her wrist. Then she really wakes up, and it looks like a suicide attempt. And it's off to the mental hospital. So the setting has changed pretty drastically already, taking it out of a certain comfort zone. Because even with all the scary nightmares going on, there still is that certain comfort of being in a normal, everyday setting, still having that kind of support in having reminders of your normal life, home and school, having parents and friends close by. And as we've seen in the first film, there is still an opportunity to be in control, to stay awake. But with Part 3, even that's all stripped away. It's a controlled and monitored environment, and one that can be perceived as very unsafe, allowing a great deal more vulnerability to Freddy. So he's really got the Elm Street kids backed into a corner for this one. He's fed off their fears. He's made everyone think that the kids are crazy, and they're pretty easy prey at this point. All they need to do is fall asleep. And aside from changing the environment, the concept that was seen in the first film is enhanced and expanded upon here. It's not just one primary character dealing with the nightmares and dealing with trying to stay awake. It's this entire group of kids who have all just been through hell and are in grave danger with no one really believing what they're going through. And they themselves not really understanding who is after them and why, and how it could be possible that they all share this same pursuer in their dreams. They're exhausted, they're at their wits' ends, and that's exactly what that evil bastard Freddy wants. He has quite the smorgasbord of troubled teens to choose from here, and I think a lot of what goes into the reason why this is one of the fan favorites in the series, and why it's responded to in such a positive way, is that there is a lot of variety to the characters. This is an ensemble piece, and even though you could argue that Kristen is ultimately the main character, I think its appeal, at least one of its appeals, is in its multiple perspectives. And without doing it in an overbearing or an unnecessarily detailed way, we get to see these different kinds of kids. They're intermingling, and we see their different struggles and their different responses to what's going on around them. We get a good idea of their flaws and their weaknesses. They all seem to have their own outlets, their own means of escapism that they flee to, that Freddy would end up trying to use against them. We have the Jennifer character with dreams of becoming an actress, obsessed with watching TV and one day being on TV. There's Taryn, who has had troubles getting over her drug addiction and still tempted to start using again. Even someone like Will, who is really into his Dungeons and Dragons game, wanting to be the wizard master. not necessarily that bad of a fantasy, but remember, this is 1987, where they'd equate playing D&D to devil worship and expected you to kill your whole family or something if you got into it too deep. Did you ever see that Tom Hanks movie? Never mind. But if we have this group of kids whose weaknesses are being exploited to make them easier prey in their nightmares, then couldn't they use these same escapist outlets to their advantage? Couldn't they turn those weaknesses into strengths to help them survive? Well, sure, all they need is some light to show them the way. And what a better light to guide them than Nancy Thompson, the first character to go head to head with Freddy, strip him of the power he had over her, and defeat him. Another great addition to Nightmare 3 is the return of Heather Langenkamp, reprising her role as Nancy. She's older now, she's wiser, she's been doing research on pattern nightmares, and she's ready to help these kids. Because she's been there before, and she knows the truth about what keeps them up at night. And that's what they really need, right? They need some understanding, someone on their level. They don't need to be told they're messed up and be pumped up full of drugs. They need a fighting chance. And so when Nancy discovers that Kristen has this amazing and unique power to bring people into her dreams, she realizes that that can be used to their advantage to fight back. Another important aspect to this film is that there are the adult characters who do want to help the kids. Sure, there's that one doctor, Dr. Sims, the lady who busts their chops at every turn. But there is Nancy, and there is Neil, Dr. Neil Gordon, who I think is a crucial character to this story. He does genuinely want what's best for these troubled teens. But he's a man of science, so reasonably enough, he wants to offer his help within the limits of what medical practices and psychology can allow. But here comes Nancy, shifting the status quo a bit, trying out some unorthodox methods, trying to get him to see the problems in a different way. So he goes along with it, even though it's a little ridiculous to him. And there is even that one part where, they have the group session. Nancy's talking about their dream powers and all they can achieve. And he says, "You sound like Peter Pan." So it's a little bit cheesy. But I like the dynamic there and the friendship that forms out of their mutual interest in helping the kids at the hospital. And I give the movie respect for not turning that into a romantic subplot or anything like that. You kind of get the sense that it's possibly going to be going that way. And maybe even at one point it was written that way. I don't know. But they steer clear of that. And because the focus really is on what's important to them and important to the story. And that's in confronting the truth. That's in accepting that there is an evil figure after these kids and all their dreams, trying to kill them, and finding the power within themselves to put up some kind of defense and stop him once and for all. Stopping him is easier said than done, obviously, and I think the film presents enough challenges and some new revelations that come to be known that serve to figure out how to do that well. And it's a really well-written horror movie. Wes Craven returned to co-write the screenplay, and the quality really shows because he knows how it works. This is his universe that he's created. He knows the characters. He knows what works in a movie like this, what makes sense, and it's his baby, really. He wrote and directed the first one, and I'm sure he must have seen the second movie at some point, too, and got an idea of how easily things can go wrong and wanted to fix that, which I think he does here. Also behind the screenplay is Frank Darabont. Mr. Shawshank. So enough said. There's a lot of great talent behind this one. And it just has a great deal of imagination to it, which I greatly appreciate. It definitely has a larger budget than the previous two had, though even so, it was hardly a gargantuan budget or anything, and what they pulled off, given its budget and given its ambitions, really is impressive. And its surreal dream world special effects really make the movie what it is. The first film and to a much lesser extent, the second film, showed what this demonic evil figure, Freddy Krueger, was capable of doing in a dream landscape. So you had this stuff like with his arms extending out in the alleyway, or even turning into a car at the end, I guess. That's nothing compared to what we see in this one. He turns into a giant, gruesome, extremely phallic worm creature in this one. He transforms into a puppet. He transforms into a TV, and in one really cool scene near the end, he appears in several mirrors in the hallway, grabbing all the kids and pulling them in. There's also the scene where his skeleton comes to life in the junkyard, which doesn't look great, but it's not perfect. It is a neat effect, though, and very reminiscent, actually, of Ray Harryhausen's work. So all that's cool. And it really defines Freddy as the trickster, as the illusionist that he is. And yeah, this one, it does play up Freddy's humor, which many people will note is a sign of worse to come, which is true. He got way sillier later. But there's a good balance here. And there's still a way that they are able to keep the character scary and threatening, but still giving him the jokes too, which I think it does work. He kills the kids in extremely ironic ways, which became almost the Freddy trademark. You'll have the one-liner to cap it off, and he'll make it look just like another teen suicide. Philip, the kid who makes all the puppets, he turns him into a bloody marionette himself and walks him off the roof, cutting off the strings, making it look like a suicide. Jennifer, the girl obsessed with being an actress, well, he turns into a TV, he grabs her, tells her to get ready for her big break in TV, and spouts out the immortal line, say it with me now, "Welcome to prime time, bitch," and boom, smashes her head into the television. Ah yes, another tragic but all too common case of teen suicide where the victim somehow jumped up towards a TV securely fastened high up on a common room wall and smashed her head right through that fucker. Really? Cops aren't gonna investigate that one? Nah, it's clearly a suicide. But never mind that. In another memorable scene, Freddy is fighting with Taryn, the ex-drug addict, who she kind of looks like she's winning for a bit and gonna kick his ass, but then he catches her off guard. His fingers turn into the heroin needles, and he kills her, presumably making it look like she got a hold of drugs and overdosed herself. So we get stuff like that, which some could probably argue is a little bit gimmicky, but I think the characters meet these ironic fates in ways that at least feel appropriate. Like, it is this guised morality parable of some kind. They had the weakness, they had the outlet to exploit. Freddy only used it, only turned it against them. It at least works in this one a lot better than it does in some of the others, because there is a balance to it. There is a method to it. So the little jokes, they do no harm to the Freddy character. I like them, but where this movie took a big risk was in introducing a little bit more of a backstory with the character. We know the basic story, the campfire tale type legend to him. He was a child murderer, possibly molester too, but in the best taste possible, that's kept implicit. He was set free due to a legal technicality, and the parents of Elm Street wouldn't stand for that, and burned the fucker alive. That's how he got to be what he is. So up until this third film, that's all we really knew. But they did add a bit more to that legend with the mysterious nun character, played by Nan Martin, that reveals some crucial information to Dr. Gordon. And it is suggested that his evil traces as far back to his own birth. A volunteer nun, Amanda Kruger, was accidentally locked in with inmates of an asylum for the criminally insane. 100 of them, to be exact. No other staff was there to notice. She was left there for days. She was raped over and over by all of them. They discovered her nearly dead, but also with child. And 9 months later, she gave birth to Freddy, the bastard son of 100 maniacs. Now, I'm a firm believer that if something is scary, it doesn't really need to be explained too much. And to go too much into detail about an evil villain's backstory, especially one like Freddy Krueger, it does run a great risk of demystifying that kind of evil. I think they just get away with it here, and I think it does complement Freddy's mythos. And with the side story of Dr. Gordon, I think it even speaks to the arc of his character and getting to believe that there are things out there that science won't be able to help with. And with that kind of backstory to Freddy, offering an origin to his evil, playing up on the supernatural elements that were already there from the first movie anyway, and just expanding on them a bit, we're able to arrive at a very tangible way to defeat Freddy that makes sense. His death, like his life, was an abomination. His evil spirit is at unease. Find his remains. Give the bastard son of 100 maniacs a proper burial. Lay the evil spirit to rest. Vanquish his purgatorial soul. That's intriguing. That raises the plot's urgency, and in fact, I think everything that's laid out and followed through with leads to a great climax and a great showdown. You had Joey, who was lured in by Freddy after disguising as a hot nurse. It happens. Kidnapped in the dream world, put into a coma. Nancy and Dr. Gordon are fired. Kristen is being sedated by the hospital staff, about to go into her dream alone. You have Nancy convincing the others to go to sleep and help her in the dream, and all face off against Freddy. Meanwhile, Dr. Gordon, getting help from Nancy's dad, Lieutenant Thompson, or actually security guard Thompson, ouch, to find where Freddy's bones have been buried to perform the burial. They gotta face that fucking skeleton when it comes to life, and it's all just done really well. I love this one. I love the story. I love the characters. I love the cast, too. I thought Patricia Arquette, she was great as Kristen. And in kind of a torch passing with Nancy as the female lead. And by the way, her scream is amazing. It can shatter glass. I kid you not. I guess that's just not something Patricia Arquette ended up wanting to be classified as a scream queen, so it's a shame she never really did that much horror after this, unless you count Stigmata. Do you remember Stigmata? Yeah, me neither. But for what it's worth, she's one of the standout characters of this entire series. Lawrence Fishburne is in the movie too, as Max, one of the orderlies. So shout out to Lawrence Fishburne, or Larry Fishburne, as he's casted here. I mean, he's not in it that much, but he's good, and it's kind of funny how they would play him up a little bit on the cover art for some of the more recent DVD releases of the movie. Robert Englund, as always, perfect as Freddy Krueger, a scary and threatening villain, but not without his charms in this entry. And Heather Langenkamp, great to see her taking on the role of Nancy once again. One of the many appeals of this one is seeing this rematch, seeing the good and evil characters come into confrontation once again under new circumstances. It's been all these years. Freddy's been out there doing his thing. He's gotten stronger because he's been collecting the souls of the kids, which we see in that creepy moment in the film where he shows that they're being consumed, that they're becoming a part of him, and making him more powerful. But Nancy's been getting stronger too. She's been doing dream studies, educating herself, excelling in her field. She's taking those drugs, the dream suppressant, the hypnocell, to keep Freddy at bay, but maybe only a temporary solution. And this reunion was a long time coming. And if the kids that Freddy has killed are giving him strength, then the kids Nancy's been helping, trying to keep alive, are giving her strength. So they're waging this sort of war. She's their leader. They're the Dream Warriors. I don't think it's some kitschy, unrelated subtitle to the movie. It is sincere. They are warriors. Maybe not in the sense that, they're running at Freddy with a fucking spiked mace or anything like you'd see on the poster, and like that might suggest. But they're fighting a spiritual war. They're extinguishing their fears. They're finding their strengths. They're fighting for their lives and for their souls. Of course they're warriors, and that's what sets this movie apart. They're in it together. They each come into that hospital separately, as lonely, lost kids going through hell. It was their fear that connected them, but it would be their strength and their friendship that would unite them to stand their ground, to not fall victim to fear, to not go quietly into the night. That's something. That's real. That's beyond your average dead teenager movie. And good reason why, all this time later, A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 Dream Warriors remains a fan favorite, and in many ways, the definitive Nightmare film. Nightmare 3, that's my review. Hope you enjoyed watching. Yeah, I love this movie. I mean, I guess it means a lot to me. I never really, thought about it until really getting into it. But yeah, I love it. It's great. But I know, depending on who you kind of talk to, some people will be like, "Oh yeah, of course, it's one of the best ones, obviously." But there are some people who aren't crazy about it actually. So I'm curious to see 30 years as the series as a whole has gone on, where people are standing with it. So comment below. I always appreciate some comments. Let me know what you think of Nightmare on Elm Street 3. I love it, as hopefully I was able to get across here. So I really thank you for watching this review. Hope you enjoy Dream Warriors as much as I do. If not, you gotta love the song, the Dawkins song, Dream Warrior. Great song. But yeah, that's my review. Thanks for watching. As always, comment, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff. More reviews are coming soon. The Freddy Marathon of 30 Years of Freddy will be continuing. Stay tuned for that. Until then, see you later.